Good evening and welcome to P&P Live. I'm Brad Graham, the co-owner of Politics and Prose, along with my wife, Lissa Muscatine. We have a great program for you this evening featuring a just published photo collection by David Katz, showing Barack Obama in the several years before he ran for the presidency. The pictures, many of them, most of them never publicly seen before, document quite revealingly Obama's improbable and rapid rise from Illinois state senator to 44th president of the United States. In conversation with David will be Valerie Jarrett, who served as a senior White House advisor during the Obama administration, in fact, the longest senior advisor, overseeing the offices of public engagement and intergovernmental affairs and chairing the White House Council on Women and Girls. She's also a longtime friend of both Barack and Michelle Obama, dating from their years together in Chicago, a journey she recounts in her own book, published last year, Finding My Voice. Valerie's going to introduce David in a moment, but first let me invite all of you watching to feel free to participate in today's discussion by posting questions. To do so, just click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. And in the chat column, you'll find links for purchasing both David's book, Barack Before Obama, and Valerie's, Finding My Voice. So Valerie, screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Brad, and good evening, everyone. I am delighted to be here supporting this important event that Politics and Prose is having for my dear friend, David Katz. I'm a huge supporter, as Brad said, of Politics and Prose. Had a couple of events there myself, and I think it's such an important time of year for us to support our local bookstores and make sure that we provide that extra special treat at the holiday season from this wonderful treasure trove that they provide. I have known David since before he was born. I mean, literally before he was born. David's mother, Lucinda, and my mother, Barbara, worked together at Erickson Institute, a graduate school in early childhood education that my mom founded well over 50 years ago. And not only that, but I also knew Lucinda when she was the director of the University of Chicago Laboratory Schools, a school that I attended, David attended, my daughter attended, and I served on the board there with Lucinda throughout most of her tenure. And so we go way, way back, to say the very least. And I also, of course, worked very closely with David in the course of the time that he was photographing then Senator Obama. And so please join me in welcoming the extraordinary David Katz. Extraordinary and talented David Katz.
Hey, thank you, Valerie. Hi, how are you?
I am so proud of you. And I have to say, been waiting for this book for a while. I knew it was going to come eventually. And I think your timing is absolutely perfect. And I know the audience is interested in seeing some of the 90,000 photographs that you took of Barack Obama. But before we jump into the photographs, I was hoping you could share with the audience a bit about how you met Barack way back in the day, why in 2004, when he was maybe coming in 30, may have been a lot further behind than that in a race with so many other folks, why you decided that you wanted to join this effort and catalog his extraordinary journey. So give us a little bit of the context for your meeting them and why you decided this is what you wanted to do with really a big chunk of your life.
Well, thanks so much, Valerie, for doing this. I really appreciate it. Our friendship does date back to, I guess, before I was born. I didn't, know you then, obviously. Thank you to Politics and Prose also for doing this. It's a great bookstore. I used to go there when I lived in Washington, D.C., so I encourage everyone to visit in person when you can. I had just graduated from the University of Michigan, and I was back in Chicago trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career. And some friends said, you should look at this Senate campaign in 2004. Barack was in third place, a long shot to win. There were a lot of challengers, and they said, well, you just got to give him a chance. Go listen to him, right? So I went to a Black church on the south side of Chicago to hear him speak. And what I noticed about him was that he connected so well with really young people, and really old people, right? And most politicians have a base, a niche. They can connect very well with certain groups. He was able to do that very effectively with multiple groups. And that's what initially drew me to him. And then I looked at the website and I noticed that the photos, the pictures, could be improved a little bit, we'll just say. They were sort of a startup operation, not too many people there, not too many resources. And I said, well, this is something I could do immediately. I had been the photo editor of the Michigan Daily, which is a 25,000 paper a day circulation paper, and I knew I could contribute right away. So went in, talked to the campaign manager, and he said, look, we can't hire you right now. We don't have any money, but go ride with him. Get in the car, go everywhere with him, photograph, and if we win the primary in March, then we'll hire you. So that's how I got started on the campaign.
And what was it like? Because you mentioned a startup, and having been a part now of several of his campaigns, it truly is a startup. People are doing multiple jobs all at once and driving around. There is no motorcade. There's none of the trappings that he had once he was even in the Senate. I mean, probably you were driving half the time too. So describe what that was like for you in those very early days of this fledgling campaign.
I think I was employee number 8, something like that, in his 2004 Senate campaign. The office was just a complete mess, right? Stuff is everywhere. There's paper here, there's coats here. It doesn't look like, a professional space at that point. People were doing lots of different things. And I distinctly remember, so I started obviously photographing, but I distinctly remember the campaign manager, Jim Cawley, saying, we need someone to drive Barack around the state. And he looked around and nobody raised their hand. And I said, well, I'm photographing. I got to be with him anyway. I raised my hand. I said, I'll do it. Right. And he said, sure, go for it. So at that point, I basically spent 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, campaigning, photographing. At times I felt like I might be his bodyguard, which my mom didn't love, and different things like that. So you chip in, you do lots of different roles. But the main thing I was doing was photographing.
Well, as you know, I chaired the finance committee of his campaign, and I get it in terms of we were all doing all kinds of things. I would show it up at host's home early. As you know, he was time challenged back in the day. He's gotten better than he was back then, but he was notorious for running late. And I am always early. And so I can remember sitting on the floor, filling out the name tags of the guests, and just texting with him saying, where are you? Where are you? And so, yeah, it was all hands on deck in those early days. But so, all right, so if you started in 2004, 17 years ago, as I said, it's taken a while. Why now did you decide this was the right time to publish your book? Because it is such a treasure trove. And I read it over the weekend with my daughter, who lived a lot of those memories as well. And it just brought back this flood of emotion, which is terrific. It feels to me like the timing is perfect, but what made you decide that now is the right time?
I almost did this book 3 or 4 different times. But in 2004, I got to meet Annie Leibovitz, the famous photographer. She was photographing Barack, and I, obviously was, very excited to meet her. I said, can I get some advice from you? I've got all these pictures of President Obama. When do you think, or then Senator Obama, do you think I should release them now? What do you think I should do? He said, well, either he's going to be President Obama one day. This is in 2004. She could already kind of sense that. Or he'll be a lawyer in Chicago and no one will really care about these pictures. So I would wait probably about 15 years to release them. So she gave me that advice, 16, 17 years ago. And that was really one of the main reasons why I thought it made sense to wait. And then, I went to see President Obama to make sure he was supportive of this, and he thought the timing was perfect, and he mentioned he was doing his book. So it all kind of came together.
Well, so I have to at least show the book since we're talking about this. And I don't see you having it there. So it's it's really around a series of vignettes and magazine style. How did you decide that this was the format that you wanted to use? What went into your thought process on that?
Right. So this was a discussion with the publisher, and you know, we at first we thought, okay, let's do it in chronological order. When one event happened, let's do the next. And you know, I said people aren't going to remember exact events from 17 years ago, right? And in my mind, I had very specific vignettes, like the first time he met Oprah, the first time he met Nelson Mandela, the 2008 election, right? And the watching the election results in their hotel room. Like I had very distinct memories that and pictures that I thought we could build vignettes around. So we decided we did break it into 2004 when he was running for Senate and 2008 when he's running for president. Those were the two periods that I photographed. And we presented the book in around like 30 different vignettes around those two periods.
So one of the qualities that I think is so special about your book is it's clear that the Obamas felt comfortable around you, because in the photographs, they look so relaxed. And obviously they've been photographed a gazillion times. But sometimes it's a little awkward when you're having your photograph taken. And you did obviously develop this relationship with them, a sense of intimacy, so that they let you into these really special moments, I think. And I was wondering, like, how did you help make that happen? And obviously he looks a little different. He's got a lot more gray hair than he did when you first started photographing him. But the peace of mind that I saw in so many of those photographs, I thought was really special. And I'm just curious, give us a sense about how you made that happen, how you were able to get him to open up and show not just himself, but his family, which, as you know, he's very protective of.
Yeah, so you know, political photography, right, and is all about, and photojournalism is all about trust, right? You have to make sure that the person you're photographing or the family you're photographing trust that you're going to honor these photographs, present them in a dignified way, protect their image, respect them, their family. And if you develop that trust, which takes, you know, a few months of getting to know each other, I think it helped that we had a few people in common that we knew, but you build that relationship. It's really about the relationship. Then you're almost like a fly on the wall, right? And so we're going to show 2008 election night later, but I am literally laying sideways underneath the television as they're watching election results come in, photographing. And I honestly think they had no idea I was there. And it took, you know, years of getting to know them or any subject, right, for them to feel that comfortable that you could take those pictures in such intimate moments.
In a sense, you became invisible.
Right.
And let the art do the job.
And that is exactly, I mean, they talk about the fly on the wall. You really have to figure out how to become invisible while also getting close enough and putting yourself in the right positions to get the shot during those most special moments.
All right, so I think we've teased the audience enough, and so we're going to jump in and show some photographs. So I think everybody now knows that the Obamas have a pretty special relationship with Oprah and also her best friend Gail. But I remember when the phone rang and it was clear Oprah was coming and calling to their home, which is in this photograph back in Hyde Park. And you were there the first day they met Oprah. So give us a little sense of what was going on at that moment. And obviously, Sasha and Malia are tiny. And I'm sure Michelle was trying to figure out how to wrangle them so they could wild and make a good impression. But give us a sense of what you saw that day.
Yeah, so I think Sasha and Malia are 4 and 8 there. So, you know, I mean, now they're out of college, or one's in college and one's out of college. So it just puts everything in perspective. So, you know, Oprah wanted to do a profile for O Magazine. And, you know, I think this was just after the DNC speech. So, you know, she obviously had seen Barack present and saw how much potential he had. So she wanted to interview them, and she came to their apartment. This is so, you know, they lived in the White House, very glamorous. They have a very nice house now. This was a nice condo, but a walk-up 3 flat in the Hyde Park neighborhood very suitable for a professor and a hospital executive, but they were a little intimidated, I think, to have Oprah come into their house. They have young kids. It was messy. And so she popped in and, took a look around and was a little perplexed as to where they were going to do this photo shoot, right? And so she recommended that maybe they talk inside, but that they walk out in the garden, which you can see behind there, and do the photo shoot there. So what we're going to show you is a whole series of, photos from that event. But I think this meeting was so critical because they spent a good hour and a half talking and really getting to know each other and solidifying the relationship. And then, from that point on, I think they would see each other every 2 or 3 months, obviously start talking on the phone a little bit more. But it was this meeting where they really got to know each other. So we can go to the next picture. Here they're talking. You can see Gail there in their solarium, right in the front part of their house. Next picture. Walking outside afterward, getting ready for the photo shoot. Next photo. And then right before they left, just a final word of goodbye and just talking and getting to know each other. So these are some of my favorite photos just visually. And, everyone looks a little different now than they did then. And, I thought this kind of told a story of how he was starting to build these relationships, starting to, become part of the mainstream and connected to, pop culture to some extent.
Those are great photos. Speaking of celebrities, anyone who knows Michelle knows that her favorite artist is Stevie Wonder. And obviously Robin Williams is a huge celebrity too. And they met Robin and Stevie back in 2004 as well. And you were there for that event. So give us a little context for that day.
Yeah, next picture, please. So this was a fundraiser for his Senate campaign in 2004, and Robin Williams and Stevie Wonder agreed to host it together. This was when he met Robin Williams backstage, and this was a version of Robin Williams, I'd never seen on TV. He's obviously so emotive and funny, and he was like deep in thought in his changing room. You couldn't bother him. And we kind of just interrupted him right before he went on stage. And that's this moment here when they were saying hello. They then, as you said, Stevie Wonder performed and they danced all night. And it was like they were having the best date night of all time. I mean, they were so relaxed. They were having so much fun. Barack told me that Stevie played the song that they had heard on their first date. And that brought back great memories. And then there was an after party. If you go to the next photo, here they are dancing, to Stevie Wonder. Next photo. There was an after party at Christy Hefner's house, and she hosted. This is Robin Williams doing an impersonation of Stevie Wonder, which I thought was just terrific. And this is one of my favorite photos. Actually, Zach Williams, Robin Williams' son, just tweeted this picture yesterday. His sister Zelda tweeted it. They just loved it. And it's in my top 5 favorite photos. And then we left, and Barack told me the next morning, he said, "Could you believe this? We left 20 minutes before Stevie Wonder played a 2-hour private concert for 20 people. How did we miss that?" He was so bummed that we left a little early.
Well, he has to get used to that. Unfortunately, throughout most of the campaign and certainly the presidential campaign, the first time I met Stevie Wonder after that night was in Indiana when we were in the primary near crunch time right before Indiana and North Carolina. And I was so excited to see him perform. And of course, we got there right as he finished performing. So we were maximizing the then senator's time. But I did have a quick moment with him, which was just incredible. He's such a delight and a wonderful person. David, we talked earlier about the girls and the desire that both Michelle and Barack had to protect them and make sure that they kept them out of the limelight. And there was this delicate balance between wanting to show your family and that you have a normal family and that your moms and dads, in addition to being a senator, but you also want to make sure that they are kept away from the limelight. And you were there in the beginning when they first started being photographed. And again, I think the intimacy that you established with Michelle and Barack Obama, you also have with Sasha and Malia. So let's describe that early time and how your relationship with the girls and their relationship with being photographed evolved.
Yeah, I think it, and this is the last picture of Robin Williams giving a toast, but we can go to the next. Yeah. So I think that in 2004, he was still relatively unknown, and the girls were so young, 4 and 8, that it was easy to kind of keep them out of the limelight. They were in school. They weren't, they weren't being photographed by TMZ and things like that, right? So it was a little bit different time. So I got, I got a little bit more access to them than I think would be appropriate, as they got older and as they became celebrities in their own right. But he was, dad number one, right? Like, yes, he was running for U.S. Senate, but being a dad was his number one priority. We would be campaigning downstate and coming back to Chicago, and he'd always want to stop at the house to say hello to the kids and play with them. And so some of those moments that we're about to show you are those moments in between events where he would squeeze in time just to go see the girls and play with them out front. And these were moments, again, where you build the trust, and he's not saying, put the camera away, this is a private moment. He knows that I'm going to be respectful with it. So again, it all comes back to trust and making sure that everybody feels comfortable. This is election night. Oh, and there was one moment which we're about to show where Malia was looking out of an RV. We were on a bus tour, and she was looking at Barack give a speech to probably 200 or 300 people. And that's when it kind of hit me that, okay, this is not like a normal childhood thing. Okay. She's on an RV, on a campaign tour, looking out at her father. She was eating a Dorito. That actually helped make it feel a little more real. But that's when it kind of hit me that their lives were a little different than most kids. This is election night, 2004. Just love the lighting. That lighting is really coming from all the TV cameras, right? And all the lights that are on them. So that also kind of drove home the point that things were starting to change. Next photo. This is election night. They had a great group of friends around them and cousins. Valerie, you'll recognize a lot of these people, but very close friends of Barack and Michelle's and their kids. They all hung out on election night, which was very sweet. Next photo. This is that moment, that I was talking about when we'd stop in between campaign events. After school, he'd come home and find time to play with the girls. Next photo. This is on the RV trip. We did a 35 city, 5-day trip right after the Democratic convention speech, which was very grueling. But they insisted that the girls come. They made it, they set up a play area for them and tried to make it as normal as possible. Next photo. He loved, teaching them, right? He's a teacher, born teacher. So any question they had, he'd love to explain things. Malia always was curious how the voting machine works. So he brought her in, and I knew I had to get that picture. So I just put the camera up high and luckily captured it. Next photo. Okay, so I think that was it for that series.
So this photograph, of course, is Pete Rouse, who was his chief of staff in the Senate and a senior advisor in the White House. And it's a part of one of my favorite vignettes, which is called Sitting in Your Office. And the reason I love it is it really shows the relationship that Barack Obama had with his team. And since I was on his staff for 8 years in the White House, it brought home to me kind of the way that he was intimate with all of us, listened to us, was, that's probably, is that even his office or is that Pete's
No,
office?
it's not. And that's the point, right? So he had this great habit of coming into your cubicle or your office, depending on what it was, and plopping himself down. Here's a US Senator at this time. And, asking you a question. It could be about work. It could be about family. But he wanted to kind of put himself, I think, on an even playing field, even though you knew he wasn't, but he wanted to do that. And it really, I think, made people feel comfortable with him. So he had a habit of doing that. And that was one of his management styles that I thought, was worth highlighting and showing. He also always, Pete Rouse told me in the book, he said, at the end of the year, we would have money left over in the Senate and we had to figure out what to do with it. And he always wanted it to go towards staff bonuses, right? And so, Pete said most senators honestly don't know the names of any of their staffers, which, and he knew everyone's name, he knew their family, and he always wanted to encourage them. And there's a story that I like to tell. A guy named Nick Bauer was a legislative assistant in our office, and Barack would walk around the office, and I was his body man then, so I'd go with him, and we noticed that Nick had holes in his shoes. And he said, Nick, he teased him. He said, you got to get some new shoes, right? Like, I mean, you can't have holes in your shoes. But then he thought about it a little bit and said, well, he's not making much money. And, he's a young kid. And so we walked over to Union Station. He said, we're going to go buy him shoes. We walked over to Union Station. He bought him shoes, brought him back and gave it to him. And I mean, that's a story that Nick will never forget the rest of his life.
Well, that's just the kind of guy that he continues to be. He's thoughtful, extremely thoughtful. Well, let's go back a little bit to before he was elected to the Senate and go to the Democratic Convention in 2004 in Boston. I wrote about it in my book, being unbelievably nervous before he started to speak. I had this horrible feeling, well, like, what if his mind just goes blank? What if he loses the audience? What if his message doesn't resonate? I mean, just all kinds of things could happen. And I remember sitting in the family box, which was directly in front of him, but way far away. And so it's not like I could reach out or send him good vibes or anything. I felt helpless, a feeling I felt many, many more times in the future after that. But you were with him during his practice sessions and photographed it. And so give us a sense of how you were feeling, having seen the sausage getting made leading up to that moment, a speech that I think not only America, but the world will always remember. It's what catapulted him onto the national and international stage. And I think was the first time that I thought, I think he would be a good president, but I thought everybody else thought he would be a good president too. And he wasn't even in the Senate yet.
Right. Yeah. What people forget is that it was not a shoo-in that he was going to give that speech, that 2004 DNC speech. And David Plouffe reminded me that they lobbied the Kerry campaign pretty hard, right, to get that speech, and they had to make a case, right? They had to present the case as to why this upstart candidate should be the DNC keynote. And they put together PowerPoints, and they, had people call. And so there was, and once Kerry did that, I mean, it was a big deal that he agreed to have Barack give that speech. There was a lot of pressure because he did that, right? And they lobbied so hard and they pushed so hard. So they wanted to get it right, and we wanted to get it right. So David Axelrod arranged for a speech coach, a guy named Michael Sheehan, who's worked with a lot of different, politicians, is really the best in the business, to help prep him. And one of the first sessions, Barack is, bellowing, right? Like screaming, thinking he's got to talk loudly enough to 20,000 people that they'll actually hear him. He said, and Michael Sheehan said, you have a microphone, right? It's right here. So he said, you actually want to talk, quietly. And he gave him all kinds of tips about, when to talk during applause and not, and things like that. So they had a great, 3 days of prep session. They used video to kind of analyze, like you do in sports, right? To see how things are going. They would analyze, the speech and make sure it was good. And he continually refined it. He wrote that speech all himself. He had other people obviously look at it, but up until right before, he was making notes about the speech. So why don't we go to the next picture? And this is, them practicing, right? Looking at it. Michael Sheehan's the guy on the far right. Robert Gibbs next to him. There's Barack, and then David Axelrod. And they're analyzing it and constantly improving. Because he was, you're speaking to an audience on television. Yes, there are a lot of people in the stadium there, but there's millions of people watching at home. Next photo. Right. So they had a lectern brought in that was exactly the same size, and and they're doing practices probably 2 days before the speech. Next photo. And then right before, Michelle is such a great influence on him, and especially before really important events, pressure-packed events, she would like lighten the mood in an amazing way. And this is like 2 minutes right before he goes on stage and gives that speech, and they're joking around. She just knew how to make everybody feel comfortable. So I really love this. Next photo. This is, there's the curtain right before he goes out. He and I both have the love of playing golf, and he mentioned to me right before he went out, they said, and now, Barack Obama, and he said, I'm going to sink this putt. So he kind of knew that he had put the hard work in, and, people, I think, were going to connect with that speech. Next photo. Okay, next section.
Well, before we move off of that speech, you will remember that he used to sometimes say when he was speaking. And my daughter, who was, oh my goodness, she was in college at the time, commented to me that he said a lot. And so before the speech, and so I passed that tip on to him, which he took with a grain of salt. But when I saw him after the speech, we were at the after party. I was there with my daughter, and he walked up to Laura and he said, I don't think I said once, did I? So even though it's coming from a kid, it did stick with him that she'd given him that critique. And he obviously knocked it out of the park. So the photograph that you're about to describe obviously is Nelson Mandela. And I met him once in passing when he visited Chicago many, many years ago when Mayor Daley was in office. And I never had a chance to see him again. I went with the Obamas to South Africa a couple of times, but the first time we went there, he was too ill to see us. And Michelle Obama had gone previously and had an audience with him, but not President Obama on that occasion. So the photograph that you captured, I think is the only time we actually met him. And it's a photograph that you probably won't brag and say this, so I will. The Obamas had it hanging all 8 years they were in the White House in their private residence. And I think you have a black and white version of it as well. But yes. Give us a little bit about that day and what that was like.
Well, he obviously had a tremendous amount of respect for Nelson Mandela. And I think out of all, political leaders that he knew, this was the one person he really wanted to meet. And we got a call. We were driving to another event in Washington, D.C., and I think driving down Massachusetts Avenue, and I get a call from our scheduler, and she says, Nelson Mandela's in town. He wants to meet Barack. Ask him if he wants to go meet him, but you got to go now. And I turned to him and asked him, he said, yeah, we're going to cancel the next meeting. We're going to go meet Nelson Mandela. So we drove over there, and I wasn't photographing at that time. I was more his personal aide, but I happened to have my camera in the car that day, luckily. And I pulled it out, and I noticed the battery was flashing like on empty. And I said to myself, oh my God, you're going to miss these photographs of Barack Obama meeting Nelson Mandela. Just, I was just praying that the battery would last. So we come in, and, this is the first shot I took. His wife, Winnie, is greeting them. You can see Nelson Mandela in the chair there with his, I think it's mostly his family, but I think is also a lot of his staff. There were probably about 10 or 15 people in the hotel room. And they, he was in fairly poor health then. So they talked for probably 10, 15 minutes. it was really like a passing of the torch is what it kind of felt like. And, you know, even in 2005, I think this was in 2005 when he was a senator, I think Nelson Mandela kind of sensed that Barack was destined for great things and saw a lot of, you know, similarities in some of their leadership abilities. And the photo you're talking about, if you go to the next photo, is this one. So Barack happened to walk over, folks kind of cleared out of the way to go say hi to him. And he happened to be just completely silhouetted in the window. And I just took 20 pictures of this moment. And this one just felt exactly right. You know, him silhouetted, the kind of the passing of the torch. And I've just, you know, absolutely, this is in my top 5 photos. And when, you know, David Axelrod, I think, had it in his office. I didn't realize that the Obamas had it in their residence until a few years ago. But that was, you know, when I heard that, it really meant a lot.
Well, it's a priceless photo, and you captured a very special moment there. So, David, your book really covers 2 campaigns, 2004 and 2008. And in 2008, you had a chance to get to know the now president-elect, Joe Biden. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about Joe Biden and his entry into the lives of all of us?
Yeah, and you know, now it's talked a lot about how warm their relationship was, and you know, how much, you know, he connected over Beau's, you know, Beau's sickness and illness, and we've heard a lot of those stories. And at the beginning, you have to remember, they didn't actually know each other that well. They were Senate colleagues for a year or two. They came from, you know, they were different generations, different styles of politician. And so they were just getting to know each other. And, you know, later on, right, their kids actually went to, so Joe Biden's, I think, grandchildren and Barack's children went to school together. So they actually developed a much, you know, more personal relationship later on. But those early days, right, they were getting to know each other. And there was one event, we go to the next 2 pictures, one more. In Fredericksburg, Virginia, that I remember, it was raining, cats and dogs, and Barack was giving a great speech. This was probably 3 weeks before the 2008 election. Biden's there, you can see. And Barack moved through the rope line, which is where you know, greet people after the speech and hug them, fairly quickly. It was raining cats and dogs. Not a lot of people wanted, you know, to get wet, and he moved through. And so we're backstage, and he says, "Where's Joe?" And we all look back, and Joe Biden is about a quarter of the way through the rope line, hugging people, smiling, you know, signing autographs, personalizing books. He just loves that kind of retail politics, and he always has. And he'll sign a book, and he'll write a paragraph inscription to that person. He's just really likes connecting with people. So I think their styles, not, you know, were a little bit different in terms of how they connected with people those early years. And, you know, they obviously have, you know, got to know each other very well during that period. So this was one of my favorite photos from their time together. If you go to the next picture, same night, one more. This was just a great moment, you know, sun setting. We did a lot of campaigns, you know, events at baseball fields, and we drove buses from one location to another. So this is a reflection in a bus. Next photo. And then later on, right, the couples got to know each other. So this is at a diner, you know, joking around. And obviously Joe Biden has said something very funny, and they're all cracking up. So I think that's it for this section.
Well, you captured a friendship that will be a lifelong friendship, and I know how thrilled the Obamas are with the election of President-elect Biden, and what a terrific experience the President-elect had as Vice President, which I think has positioned him perfectly to step right in a seamless way and hit the ground running when he becomes president in just couple months. But before we get to the end of the story, I have a couple more questions, and then we're going to open it up to folks who put questions in the Q&A, which I'll read out. But we have to, of course, talk about election night in Grant Park in 2008. And David, you and I are from Chicago, so and anyone who's watching who knows Chicago knows how special it was to have it right there on our beautiful lakefront in such a extraordinarily architecturally significant park, and gathering the people many who came in from all over the place peacefully celebrating. And I think folks from all over the world have seen a gazillion photos of that night, and it was such a moving, deeply inspirational night to see that first family on the stage, and then followed, of course, by Vice President Biden and his family, reflecting the rich diversity of our country, I would say. But why don't you show us a few of the photographs that haven't been seen before that you managed to capture that night?
Well, one of the vignettes I told in the story, if you go to the next picture, one more, was about a guy named Lane Evans. So many of you probably don't even know who Lane Evans was. Lane Evans was a congressman from Western Illinois who unfortunately died of Parkinson's disease too early. And he was actually the first person to endorse Barack during his campaign. And he endorsed him in Western Illinois, which is a very Republican area. Lane happened to be a Democrat, but in a very Republican area. And this was really, really important to the campaign. And they had a deep personal connection. Barack went out there. Lane invited him to go see his district. They connected over the music, like the Beatles, and he would take him around to go introduce him, right, to all his constituents. And this was at a time when no one else around the state would do that for him. And he remembered that, and he was so grateful to Lane that on election night 2008, he knew Lane's health was starting to fail. He actually made a point to invite him to the hotel to come say hi and see him. And I just thought this was so deeply moving, and I'm glad I got to capture this. And his partner there, Lane's partner, said that after that event, he wept the entire night, that the President of the United States, Lane couldn't do anything for him anymore. President-elect, on election night, invited him to his hotel to have a chat. It was just so moving. So that's one of my favorite stories from election night. And then if we go to the next photo, it was tense in that room, right? This is election night 2008. And it was tense for two reasons. One is that it was very sobering because of the economic collapse. So David Plouffe reminded me that, he realized that he was about to inherit the mess that was left for him, and that there was going to be so much hard work ahead of him, right? So that was one aspect. And I think the other aspect was more personal. They knew their lives were changed forever. And I think on their faces, right, you can sense excitement, apprehension, uncertainty, right? And that's what, I was trying to capture. And as I said, I was lying underneath the television taking these photos, trying to be that fly on the wall and just let the true emotions come through. Next photo. This is watching, John McCain give the speech, and the concession speech. You've got advisors in the room. Next photo. The kids were a little bored, as you can see. They were kind of like, all right, let's get to the party. But next photo. And, he's had such a special relationship with his mother-in-law, which we know about. And she's been such a rock in their family. And I thought this was a very touching moment when he reached over and took her hand there. And I think it was, both acknowledging that things are never going to be the same, and also kind of thanking her for being such a stable force in all their lives, is sort of how I interpreted that moment.
You know what, David, I would mention, just to remind those who were tuning in, that his grandmother, who helped raise him, had died the day before.
Oh, that's
And so
right.
I think Marion's presence that day was even more important, because I just can't even imagine how that must have felt to have lost the person who had been such an instrumental part of his upbringing. Just, she just could not hold on one more day. And so Marion really picked up and became that surrogate mother for him, because his mother obviously had died many years earlier.
I think, oh, and then one more photo, right? The Obamas rarely drink alcohol. I noticed, on the campaign, I don't think I saw him sip a beer the entire time, but this was cause for celebration. They had just been elected president of the United States, and right after that Grant Park celebration, they went to the glamorous trailer, that backstage trailer, and Barack poured their favorite drink, I guess a vodka martini, as he's being, as the TV and CNN showing his speech there. So you're always trying to balance not to be too invasive, especially in very private moments like this. So I actually think I'm taking this through a door. You can kind of see the door frame on the left, but it was just like such a perfect moment that I had to get the picture.
So David, you have a few more that I know are very special to you that we're going to show, and then I'm going to get to some of the questions before
Perfect.
we close it up.
Yeah, we'll move through these. These are just some of my favorite pictures. We would campaign downstate, I think I mentioned a lot, and he always wanted to get his hair cut by Zarif, his favorite barber in Chicago. So Zarif would open up the barber shop late at night, like 10 o'clock at night when we got back from campaigning, and cut his hair, and obviously no one's there, but this is the barber shop where he got his hair cut until he became president. Next photo. The Kane County Cougars, a minor league AAA, I think they're AAA, they might be single A, baseball team in suburban Chicago, asked him to throw out the first pitch at their game. This was, as he's running for Senate. And Robert Gibbs, the communications director, called me and he said, did Barack ever play baseball? And I said, I don't think so. He was tennis and basketball. And he said, well, we can't have him embarrass himself. So you better, practice. Didn't you play high school baseball? So somebody had a connection to Wrigley Field and the Cubs, and they were willing to, they were out of town. They were willing to open up the bullpen, and, we're practicing, he's practicing pitching on the bullpen at Wrigley Field. That was a fun moment. Next photo. One of my favorites. So, having very close friends around you, campaigning with you, the trust is just so important. And, Valerie goes back with Barack and Michelle longer than anybody. And, I think you cannot underestimate how important it is to have people you're comfortable with, people you know well, people you trust, around you during the most stressful points of your life. Next photo.
You always find a reason to laugh.
We were campaigning, getting to know shop owners in the Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago, a Mexican neighborhood there, and we popped in here, and he tried on the cowboy hat. So this was just a visually fun picture. We probably were in the Senate office for 3 months and didn't have any artwork. And so I went to our office manager, Carolyn, who I think is on this session here. And I said, hey, would you mind if I figure out how to get us some artwork for the office? And I got in touch with the Smithsonian, and they said, actually, for senators, we have a program that allows you to get Illinois artists their work into the office. So I nights and weekends, I kind of got, 30 or 40 pieces with Carolyn's help, and we got it in the office. So this is a piece of Adlai Stevenson and Eleanor Roosevelt in the office there. Barack loves to play poker. He is a card shark. And he used to, one of the ways he connected with a lot of his Senate colleagues in Illinois who were, you know, more conservative and old fashioned perhaps to some extent, was through playing cards. And so they would play, I think, once a week or once a month. And this is the goodbye poker game. He had just been elected senator and he was saying goodbye to his colleagues, you know, before he went to Washington. I took 2 pictures and they said, put your camera away, but I got these 2 in. Next photo. This is Barack walking through Central Park. You know, this is at a time where people just didn't know him and he felt so free being able to walk through Central Park. He loved New York. He went to Columbia. He would reminisce. He would be it's a little bit of a know-it-all about New York. We'd be walking around and I'd say, I think we need to go this way. He said, no, we got to go this way. I know my directions. Let's take the subway. He always wanted to take the subway. So this just made him feel like a normal person. If you go to the next picture, you can really see that he is, if you go to the next photo, you can see that, you know, really nobody knows it's Barack Obama, right? I mean, you've got, go back one, you've got, you know, tourists taking pictures as he's walking by there. And next photo. I just love this picture because, you know, this was I think we're having some lag. Good. This was a fundraising event in downstate Illinois, and he had to take a call, and the garage was the quietest place to do it. So he just walked out there, and before, I mean, there were cell phones, but, you know, the landline, I mean, thinking of a US president taking a call in a messy garage is kind of funny to think about. Next photo. This is the Al Smith dinner in DC, and you know, this was where both Barack and John McCain would give a talk, and it's a roast to some extent. And you know, they actually had a very cordial relationship, especially compared to, you know, the climate now. And you know, this looks a little more fierce that they're looking at each other than they were, but they were always very respectful to each other and got along actually quite well. Next photo. I just love this visually, the lighting and the colors. And I think we've got 2 more. So this is the photo I was talking about with Malia looking out the RV at Barack giving that campaign speech, eating a chip. And, you know, this is when I did get a sense that, you know, this is not what most kids go through. You know, I just also visually love the image. Next photo. And I think this is the last one we're going to show. I mean, I wanted to end with this because it really is about, you know, the people he was connecting with and why they felt such a connection to him. The emotion it was just so raw in that campaign, especially for, you know, minorities and African Americans. And I saw this at every single campaign event we went to. So I wanted to end with this and give you a feel for what that 2008 campaign was like.
What a perfect photo to end with, David. Well, we only have a few minutes left, but we're going to get to a few of the questions before we let everyone go. There's one that I'm curious about the answer myself. What were the biggest lessons for you? What inspiration do you derive from having had this amazing perspective on this great man? That's from Eugenie Rosenthal.
Yeah, I think, you know, just, this is for probably a lot of the young people. If you are passionate about something, like, just get involved and do it. And you never know where it's going to take you. And so one of the biggest lessons I learned is that the people who got involved in the campaign, you know, contributed their talents, you know, and, you know, tried to help the cause, you know, had a great experience. And so I think in anything you're trying to do, that's the key. Just get involved, get motivated, and you never know where things will take you.
Next question, David, from Alex Hirschhorn.
Hey, Alex.
you know Alex, right?
Yeah.
So you had an incredible experience as a photographer. What led you to move on to a career in business rather than staying with your passion of photography?
I will always love photography. It would be my first love. I'm taking a lot of pictures on my iPhone of my kids these days. I had always loved business too. And, if I hadn't gotten involved, I think with the Obama campaign, I probably would have started in business from the beginning. And so I think that it was a natural progression to move back into that after I served in the administration.
One of the anonymous attendees said, great photographs. Oh, shoot, I lost it. Well, I know what he said. He wanted to know what the Obamas said after they took a look at your book.
I just got a note from Barack's aide that he flipped through it and loved reminiscing, looking at the photos. So I just got that email a few hours ago.
I'm sure it was a trip down memory lane for them as well. Another anonymous said that you were carrying film SLR camera, whatever that means, I'm sure you know, around with you at all times during this period. Were you carrying that at all times? That's a question. And did the Obamas get used to having everything documented, or do you think it was difficult for them?
He had an amazing ability. You've probably seen this, Valerie. I mean, if someone's taking a picture of me, I can be a little distracted. He had an amazing ability to just tune everything out and not get distracted by that. So maybe they never got used to it, but I never sensed that. I think one time he told me, I got to focus, stop taking pictures. Out of 90,000 pictures, for him to say that one time is pretty remarkable.
Very much so. Another person wants to know that obviously you captured and showed us your top 5. Were there some that got away? What were the ones that got away?
That's a good question. I always wanted to take, we spent a lot of time in the car, and it's kind of hard to take pictures in the car, but I thought that would have been fun to kind of tell that story. He would DJ for us a lot. He would play Indonesian flute music. He'd play Frank Sinatra. He'd play Outkast. And I always thought, it's hard. It's easier to tell that story, but it would be fun if I could have, documented that somehow.
There's one more serious one, and then 2 not as serious.
Okay.
A person said, I assume that Barack encountered racism out on the campaign trail. If so, how did he deal with it?
I don't ever remember seeing any overt racism on the campaign trail. Now, we were in maybe a little bit of a bubble. We had the Secret Service around us. I'm sure there were plenty of I know there were a lot of threats, but I didn't see any overt racism out there, believe it or not.
All right.
I don't know if you, Valerie, you were out there a lot. I don't know if you can remember anything, but.
You know what? I don't, because I do think by the time, even in the Senate campaign, he was in such a bubble. Now, he saw it in the media. He saw it obviously on social media, and so did Michelle Obama for that matter. But I didn't see anyone directly. Now, part of it is the self-selecting crowd, people who showed up. Now, there were times where people held up signs that were not that pleasant as he drove by, but I didn't see any direct encounters with him or with her. So I don't know that you really want to answer this, David, because you might want to preserve your relationship with the Obamas, but who's the better golfer, you or Barack?
It's an amazing thing. Our golf games have gone, I don't know if I'm doing this right, like this, right? So, retirement has served him well. And the last time we played, he beat me really well. So really good. So I think I've got to start. I have 2 young kids, so that's my excuse.
Well, the last question is really a comment. And given the 2 young kids, I might know the answer, but it says from Elaine Smith, I hope that you'll photograph Biden as president. So maybe you can do it not as his official photographer, but just as a gift to us all.
I would love to do that.
Well, thank you so much, David. I've had such a treat having this conversation with you. I'm so proud of your book. I will cherish it and leave it on my coffee table for all to see once I can have company again when we pass this horrible pandemic. But
thank you for doing this, Valerie.
My pleasure.
And thank you to all the people who joined, friends and family and people who I haven't met yet.
And Brad, welcome back.
Valerie, great moderating, and David, what a wonderful photographic tribute to Barack Obama. And I know there are many more pictures in the book. To everyone watching, a reminder that you can find a link in the chat column to buy David's Barack Before Obama, and Valerie's book too, Finding My Voice. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. From us here at Politics and Prose, stay well and well read.